On this Relationship 911, we're talking about
tips for newlyweds. Do you have any?
lots.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm Monika.
And I'm Jan. And Elijah, what's today's question?
This question is from Monika. Monika says, my husband and I are newlyweds and would love a couple tips on how to make this work.
Okay.
I love that question.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question.
So tip number 1 is buy the relationship program from Jan and Monika, because it's everything you need to make your relationship work.
I love that. That is a very authentic plug.
I mean, seriously.
For a program that absolutely helps newlyweds, relationships, and not even if you're searching for a relationship. You don't even have to be in a relationship, but it's an amazing program, and we won't say any more about that. Tip number 2.
Except for the relationshipprogram.com. Okay, now we won't say anything more about that. Okay, so that was is that tip number 1?
That's shameless plug.
That's shameless plug and tip number 1.
And tip number 1.
Okay, great.
Tip number 2.
Yes.
So I would say that one of the most important things that happened with you and I is that I don't know how to express all of what happened, but I felt like through much of my life, I was proving myself to people in my life who were important, who I wanted love from. And you were the first relationship in my life where I felt like you loved me for all of me. And I didn't have to prove something, and I didn't have to be something, and I didn't have to do more. And there was just this, I accept you, and I see you, and I love, 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 love you. So my tip is find that in each other. Find all the things. Make lists of things that you absolutely love about your partner. The things that you find quirky, the things you find cute, the things that maybe they complain about themselves, but you love, and share it. Tell them how much you love them, because the more you feel loved in a relationship, the more when challenging things come, you'll have the tools and the willingness and the compassion and the empathy to work through them.
Great. So what I just heard you say is look for all the things that you love about your partner.
Yeah.
And look for all the new things on a daily basis, because over time, it's, we've been together, we've been married now 18 years. So it's like, what's the new thing? What's the new thing? But don't just hold it inside, share it with your partner.
That's right.
Great. So my tip is something that we call agreements versus assumptions. And this is a big one, because often in relationships, people think that my partner is going to think exactly the same way I am. And whenever we have a conversation, that they're going to understand like the full, everything that is in my head, she's going to know as well. And we make these assumptions. And what we suggest is actually make agreements. So if you're newlyweds, it may be new that you're living together. So what are your agreements about doing the dishes? What are your agreements about where you put your shoes when you walk into the house? Is it okay to leave them at the front door, or do they go into the closet? Like little things like that. How do you do your toothpaste? Little things like that where you've always done it one way your whole life, and now suddenly you're in a relationship and they may want to do it differently. Those could turn into little arguments that could turn into big arguments. So really having awareness of we're now a unit, we're now a team, and how do we not just assume that the way that I've done it always up until now is still the way that I'm going to do it in the future, and let's just talk about these things and let's create loving agreements that work for both people. So my tip number 2, agreements over assumptions.
Awesome. And that brings up a beautiful transition into the next tip, which is don't keep score. So let's say that you've made an agreement with someone and they're not following the agreement exactly the way you like. And you don't say anything because it's like, well, we have the agreement, so I'm not going to say anything, but it upsets you. And then 3 more times it happens and you get progressively more and more upset. And then someone trips your switch, triggers you in a way, and all of a sudden, all the things that your partner has ever done that you've been keeping score about come flooding to the surface, and you start yelling one at a time all those things that they're doing wrong. So this is not healthy. This is not beneficial, because what happens is often in relationships, then it becomes a screaming match. Who said what? Blame, 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 back and forth. And it can break trust. It can break collaboration and willingness to try new things or do things the way that they do it. And then what the typical explanation people have is, you don't let me be me. And this is a very solvable tip. if you don't keep score, if you don't keep a running score of all the things they're doing wrong and not say anything about them in the moment, and you get really present to, I'm not trying to pick on them, I'm finding the things that are actually meaningful to me that would make a difference for the way I am. And not in the heat of a moment, but in dialogue, in a dinner conversation. It's like, hey, there are some things that I notice you've been doing that I've kind of been overlooking, but I've overlooked a couple of times and I really don't feel like I can overlook anymore. So I'm going to make the request and see how you feel about if there's a way that we can have a solution. And we can find it together. Not, this is the way I need you to do it. It's, let's find a solution that works for us both. Yeah. So in the example of putting the shoes away, if it feels like that is a non-negotiable, then I might say, would you please put the shoes away? Because when they're not away, it feels like you don't care about what our house looks like. And it's a deeper issue for me.
Great. Great. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people do that where it's like, I've done the dishes 3 nights in a row, I've made the bed, I did the laundry the last 3 times, and they keep score, and people don't realize that they're holding it inside. Yeah. They're holding an anger and an upset and a bitterness inside that eventually comes out in an argument. And then it becomes a small argument, often becomes a really big argument. Yeah. Great. Good. So tip number 4 from Jan is know your love language. So there's a great book called The 5 Love Languages, and it talks about how people have different ways of receiving love, like how they love to receive love, and also typically how they love to express their love. And it's really important because I think it's important to know your own love language and to know your partner's love language. My love language is words of affirmation.
You're so awesome.
Thank you. See, I love that. Love that. And I know that. And so she knows that. And so she makes an extra effort to really use words of affirmation with me. And I know that her love language is acts of service. She loves when I do the little extra things. So let's say she's on a trip and she comes home and her car has been washed and is full of gas. Then to her, that's like, he loves me. Yeah, I did it for you. You want to do it again?
He loves me.
Thank you. So and it's good to know what is your partner's love language so that you can really do the things to have them feel how much you love them.
Great.
Thank you.
And tip number 5 for me is enjoying moments with your partner that includes people that lift your relationship up. When we have dinner parties, when we have family events, when we have game night, when we have just these moments that we share with people that are close to us, I feel like Jan and I get closer in those moments because we appreciate who we are for others and we appreciate who we are for each other. And it also feels, we have 3 children, so it feels really profound that we're showing our children how to be a partner and connected in an environment in our life.
Great. I have a bonus one. Can we do a bonus one? Do you mind? All right, I'm going to. So my bonus one is the conversation of being right. So often in relationships, people feel the need to be right. I happen to have been married to someone for a long time.
I thought you weren't going to talk about that.
Oh, well, sorry. Where sometimes you feel the need to be right. Now, the problem is that when you're right...
Wait, I'm right. Let me tell them the rest.
When you're right, then that often makes someone else wrong, which does not work well in relationships. So I have to tell you that sometimes, even if you know you're right, even if you know, like Monika may say, I never said that. I never texted you to that. And I can have the text on my phone and I could show it to her. And if I show it to her, I prove that I was right and she was wrong. And guess what? She's going to be mad at me for a while. Fun. And so why have to be right? When you have to be right sometimes, you may win the battle, but you lose the war. So that's my bonus tip.
Not that relationships have wars in them.
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
I know.
Yeah. So sometimes in relationships, you just have to give up being right. And instead of being right, be loving.
So if you have additional tips for our newlyweds, go ahead and share those in the comments below.
Yeah, and click subscribe if you want more Relationship 911.